Next up, we've got Alicanto Minerals, which is exploring for silver, lead, zinc, copper and gold at the Sala deposit in Sweden. I believe you've got a maiden resource coming up very shortly. To tell us when, maybe, please welcome Alicanto Managing Director, Peter George.
Great, thanks, Christy. Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for taking the time to listen to my presentation today. Look, I'm going to take a bit of a different approach in my presentation, but first of all, the Sala project itself, a historically significant project, very high-grade silver mine, coveted by numerous kings in Sweden over about 500 years. Average grade of about 1,244 grams per tonne silver. They had a byproduct called zinc at 12%, which they just threw away. But like I said, Christy started at the start, maiden resource. I was hoping to tell you about that today, but we've just got a few minor delays, but we'd just assure everybody that we're well and truly on the right track. But one of the main reasons that the maiden resource is not ready yet today is that we've hit significant mineralisation in every single drill hole that we've had so far. But we have drawn a line in the sand, and we're working hard on that at the moment. But I'm going to take a bit of a different approach, as I said, and I'm going to take the opportunity just to talk about some of the amazing possibilities for Alicanto in Sweden, and especially in the zinc and silver space. Well, this is a part of a market that's been largely left in the shadow of the tech market and other metals the last couple of years. But with zinc metal prices approaching 15-year highs again, and silver showing an awful lot of promise, the scene is set, I believe, for a boom that the likes have never been seen in this space. Just quickly on the disclaimer, apologies for the small text, but that can be read in detail in our announcement that we put out this morning, and I'll just get you to pay particular attention to the section on forward-looking statements. Before I get into the presentation itself, I'll just give you a quick overview of the corporate snapshot and the team. But with regards to our cash reserves, we're well funded, over $6 million in the bank at the end of March, very well supported by our substantial shareholders and our top 20 holders that control over 50% of the company. As far as the share price performance is concerned, look, this graph annoys me, but at the same time gets me really excited as I see a massive opportunity for investors to jump in at extremely low prices. A market capitalisation of 27 million is quite ridiculous in my opinion, and I hope that by the end of this presentation you'll see the massive upside that I see. On the board and management, you'll know it's a very strong Bellevue flavour. I've got Ray, Steve and Mike. I think I've got a few of the boys here in the audience today providing valuable expertise in helping me drive the company forward. But if you're wondering about why Sweden, then I'll draw your attention to our Chief Geologist Eric and myself, with a combined 30 years of experience exploring and mining in Sweden, with both of us being ex-Boliden employees and Eric being a former Chief Geologist, with over 6 major green and brown fields discoveries to his name in the country himself. So back to Sala. I just thought I'd start with this photo. So we released these results, 4.7 metres at 24.2% zinc, 875 grams per tonne silver and 3.7% lead at the beginning of May. A massive sulphide hit. And as Eric described it to me, as a geologist, you'll be lucky to see this once or twice in your career. Look, this is close to 5 metres at an ounce of gold equivalent. And you combine that with other hits that we've had within the project of 87 metres at 5.3% zinc and 40 grams per tonne silver and a whole bunch of others, you can see why we can see a serious resource building before our eyes. The alternative approach that I'm going to take in this presentation is just to give you a quick analysis on the market in Sweden itself, which many of you won't know much about. So Sweden is a major player in the European and world markets, especially for a country of only 10 million people. It's a diversified market that has a strong mining economy but an even stronger manufacturing and technology sector. There are 4 major issues that Sweden is now facing. After about 30 years of tightening environmental controls for exploration and mining companies, Sweden, along with other Tier 1 jurisdictions like Australia, have some of the most technically difficult places in the world to actually get mining projects approved. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible. Companies such as Alicanto have been very successful in applying modern thinking and making impressive progress where many others have not. Tightening controls and affliction to change and fear of the unknown has resulted in the majority of international funding going elsewhere over the last 30 years. And because of this severe underinvestment in Sweden, the cupboard is seriously bare. COVID-19 itself has created massive supply chain issues in Sweden, as it has in the rest of the world. A major supplier of leading technology, but I believe this is likely temporary as the world recovers from this shock. But if you step back and take a look at the supply versus demand curve, which I'll show you in a minute, for metals such as zinc, the pressure is really building, and it is going to get a lot worse, or perhaps better in our situation. Russia invading Ukraine has meant the end of globalisation for the next 5 to 10 years and a return to protectionism in Europe. But with sanctions on Russia now biting hard, Sweden has been called upon as one of the European countries to pick up the shortfall in the supply of metals, and I'll show you a graph in a minute which tells the story very clearly. And Sweden was one of the first countries in the world to adopt a net zero emissions target by 2045 in its submission to the UN, the long-term climate strategy, and the green transition is going to require a massive investment in infrastructure, including a lot of zinc, silver and lead. But after a recent overreaction, I believe, to inflationary pressures and COVID restrictions in China, base metals are back on the charge. Sweden has accepted that to achieve its ambitious net zero targets for 2045, it needs a lot of metal. Well, not just any metal, it needs to be ethically and locally sourced from companies and countries that are prepared to walk the talk with their ESG and sustainability strategies. And I believe Alicanto is in a prime position to benefit from that. So on to the Swedish mining industry itself. With the end of globalisation and increased level of protectionism, Sweden and Europe as a whole is under increasing pressure to be self-sufficient in its metal supply. As you can see in the graph to the right, Sweden is close second in the supply of zinc metal to the European market, but second to Russia, which is now facing sanctions on basically everything that it produces, leaving Sweden in a very good position. This is where it's going to get tricky. If I can draw your attention to the table on the left, after 30 years of underinvestment in exploration in mining projects and exploration, in Sweden the cupboard is bare. There are 3 significant undeveloped base metal projects in Sweden in the pipeline, all controlled by one company. With Sala, there will be 4, and I'll soon be able to argue that as far as the potential new supply of zinc, silver and lead are concerned, it will be the most significant. Looking outside of Europe and at the global market for zinc, I really like this slide, but I can't take credit for it. Tech Resources put out some great stuff, and if you want to look in any more detail, I'll direct you to their presentations. But the important thing here is the worldwide project pipeline for zinc projects. According to these graphs, zinc supply is already struggling to keep up with demand, and it's only going to get worse. If I draw your attention to the base case in dark blue, you can see that already now in 2022, the committed supply side is already dropping off and is now becoming reliant on incoming supply of new projects, which may or may not get off the ground. Obviously, the hope on the demand side of the market is that market forces will drive innovation and discoveries will be fast-tracked, but as per the previous slide, the cupboard in countries, leading suppliers, countries such as Sweden, is basically bare, and any new discoveries will take years to firstly be found and then be developed, if at all. On the silver side, supply versus demand, look, I'm very bullish on silver. Again, I can't take credit for these diagrams either. They've come from Maria Smirnova at Sprott Asset Management, but the advice here is excellent and very relevant to Alicanto. I think from a pricing standpoint, silver is historically undervalued relative to gold right now and offers an attractive investment opportunity, especially in these inflationary times. We see a picture of silver fundamentals where supply trends cannot keep up with longer-term demand. Overall, the silver market itself has been in a physical deficit since 2019, and silver mine supply has been in decline since 2016. On the demand side, all segments of silver are rebounding, led by industrial, jewellery and physical investment. So I believe that silver is likely to benefit from supply constraints in the face of growing demand. We expect green technology and decarbonisation trends to continue and increase even if economic growth slows globally. Silver is a critical component of EVs and solar panels, which are experiencing strong demand growth globally and are a critical part of the green transition. And at present, there are some serious backlogs in the supply of both of these, and I expect that's going to continue. So onto our solar project and Sweden. Many of you may not be that aware of Sweden's long mining history, but they've been doing it for a few thousand years. Solar is located within the Bergslagen in Sweden's south, and the Bergslagen is famous for being one of the most mineralised places on Earth. And I can back this argument up with the massive high-grade ore bodies that have been mined in the area over the last 1,000 or 2 years, with the Garpenberg zinc gruvan, Falun and Sala ore bodies all having world-class in their metal content and the importance that they have played to Sweden as a nation. Sweden is a Tier 1 mining jurisdiction with key infrastructure already in place, where we don't need to worry about educating a pro-mining workforce, building highways, railways, power stations, water access or high-speed communications links, because everything's already there. Digging down into solar itself, look, we've only had the solar project since the beginning of last year, and up until 1 year ago it had basically all but been forgotten about with very little modern exploration. As I mentioned before, a historically significant mine for Sweden over a 500-year period with only 5 million tonnes mined, only down to 290 metres, but over 200 million ounces of silver and an unknown quantity of zinc and lead. For the first time in history, we have managed to source 18,000 metres of historical drilling into one database from several places and combine it with 20,000 metres of our own drilling over the last 12 months, all of which will form the basis of our maiden resource at Sala. But at Sala we have grade, as I mentioned in that previous slide, but we also have width, two key components to a successful project where we've intersected some amazing grades and widths. And as I mentioned, unbelievably, Sala was only mined down to 290 metres in the early 1900s when it was thought that the ore had run out. It's a very similar story in many ways to the Bellevue success story, and with our team, you can understand why we are getting excited about the possibilities at Sala. So digging down a little bit further into the geology, but for the first time in history, our geologists understand the stratigraphic sequence and can track the mineralised horizons over many kilometres. We've intersected some spectacular grades and widths at Sala. We now understand that we are dealing with several different types of mineralisation, with the two main types being the strata-bound sphalerite zinc-dominated mineralisation, where we have the Prince deposit running south-southeast to north-northeast, and the Sala-style structurally controlled galena silver-dominated mineralisation running southeast to the northwest. We've discovered a potential repeat of the Sala mineralisation as released to the market in May, and strong possibilities of more synform and antiform structures that could hold more of these as we continue our exploration efforts. As I mentioned, we have over 38,000 metres of drilling now in our database, 20,000 metres of our own, but we don't intend to stop at our maiden resource. We can definitely see a pathway to potentially doubling our resource at Sala in a relatively short period of time, and the guys on the ground are working hard on fulfilling those plans. So to quickly summarise, on the mineral economic case for zinc and silver, look, as the world recovers from COVID-19 pandemic, globally zinc and silver supply is struggling to keep up with the demand, and some of the brightest minds on the planet are convinced that the gap is only going to widen. Locally in Sweden is the major supplier of zinc and silver to Europe, and with the combination of the green transition, Russian sanctions and COVID-19, the pressure is really starting to build. But with many years of underinvestment in exploration in Sweden, as I mentioned, the cupboard is bare. So we have what others want. With regards to the opportunity at Sala itself, the maiden resource is slightly delayed, but is only getting better. We've drilled some spectacular grades and widths, the hallmarks of a successful and long-life mining project. We're in a Tier 1 mining jurisdiction where I don't need to build power stations, transmission lines, roads, railways, deep-sea ports, etc., etc. The timing for Sala potentially heading into production over the next 5 or so years couldn't be better. The global supply versus demand fundamentals just don't lie. But locally, as one of only a few new base metal projects in the Swedish pipeline, we have what others want. So thanks very much for your time today. And if you'd like to understand any more about Sala and exploring and mining in Sweden, do feel free to come up to the booth and have a chat.
Thanks, Peter. Last but definitely not least is Kingston Resources. Kingston recently acquired the Mineral Hill gold-silver mine in Cobar, and just yesterday delivered a definitive feasibility study for the large, long-life Missima Gold project in PNG. To tell us more, please welcome Andrew Corbett.
Thank you, Christy, and thank you to Reed Corporate for hosting a fantastic conference so far here in the Gold Coast. And it's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate everyone hanging